The abyssal plain, 4,000 meters below the Pacific's sun-drenched surface, was a realm of absolute blackness and crushing pressure, a place less explored than the moon. It was here, within the pressurized hull of the deep-sea research station Triton's Point, that Dr. Aerys Thorne preferred to be. He found a unique tranquility in the silent, alien world outside his viewport, a world populated by bioluminescent ghosts and geological wonders. For a man who had felt more at home with data streams and sonar ghosts than with people, this was sanctuary. The station was a marvel of engineering, a small city of interconnected modules anchored to the seafloor, its titanium alloy shell designed to withstand pressures that could turn a military submarine into a crumpled can. Inside, the air was recycled, the light was artificial, and the only sound was the constant, low hum of the life support systems. Aerys was monitoring the long-range hydroacoustic sensors, a routine task that was usually as predictable as a metronome. His specialty was xenolinguistics, a field that had earned him more ridicule than research grants, as its primary application was theoretical communication with extraterrestrial life. Down here, he applied its principles to the complex vocalizations of cetaceans and the undiscovered symphonies of the abyss. He was charting the slow, deep pulses of the trench when the anomaly appeared. It wasn't a sound. It was a ghost in the data, a wave of energy that shouldn't exist. It didn't propagate like a seismic wave, nor did it have the signature of a magnetic field fluctuation. It was structured, patterned, almost intentional. His fingers flew across the console, isolating the signal. It was faint, a whisper beneath the immense background noise of the planet itself. The pattern was intricate, a repeating sequence of frequencies that resembled a fractal. It was beautiful, complex, and utterly impossible. "Command, this is Thorne in acoustics," he said into his comm link, his voice calm despite the frantic thrumming in his chest. "I'm picking up an anomalous energy signature originating from Sector Gamma of the trench. It's not geological." The voice of station director Eva Rostova crackled back, professional and perpetually weary. "Define not geological, Aerys. Volcanic vent. Tectonic stress fracture. Negative director. The waveform is coherent. It has a complex, repeating mathematical structure. It almost looks biological or artificial." There was a pause on the other end. Aerys was known for his unconventional theories, the quiet genius who saw patterns others missed, but this was a significant claim. "Send the data stream to my console and get a confirmation from geology. I don't want to deploy the Chimera unless we're sure." The Chimera was the station's most advanced deep-sea drone, a remotely operated vehicle capable of withstanding the trench's hellish pressures. For the next hour, Triton's Point was a hive of quiet, focused activity. Geologists confirmed the signal wasn't seismic. Physicists were baffled by its properties, which seemed to violate known energy propagation models. The signal was real, and it was coming from the deepest, most unexplored part of the trench. Aerys felt a strange sense of vindication mixed with a profound unease. He'd spent his life listening for whispers in the dark, and now the dark was whispering back. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a discovery. It was an introduction. As he analyzed the repeating patterns, he recognized a theme, a core structure that reminded him of the syntax used in ancient, dead languages on Earth. It had a root, a modifier, a recursive element. It was a language without sound. Eva's voice came over the station-wide comm. "All hands, this is the director. We have confirmed a stable, non-terrestrial energy source at a depth of 7,000 meters. We are deploying the Chimera for visual confirmation. Dr. Thorne, you will guide the drone's acoustic analysis from the command center." Aerys acknowledged, his eyes fixed on the screen where the signal pulsed like a faint, alien heartbeat. The mystery of what lay in the deep had been his life's quiet obsession, an echo of a family tragedy. His grandfather, a naval commander, had been lost decades ago in this very ocean, his submarine vanishing without a trace, leaving behind only a single, garbled transmission about singing metal. For the first time, Aerys wondered if that old ghost story was about to become his reality. The weight of the water above felt heavier than usual, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what its depths would reveal. The secret it had kept for millennia was about to be disturbed, and Aerys was the one who had knocked on the door. He just hoped whatever answered was friendly. The command center of Triton's point was a hemisphere of glowing screens and focused tension. Aerys sat at a secondary console, his own data streams fed directly to the main view screen, where Director Rostova oversaw the Chimera's descent. The drone, a sleek, crab-like machine bristling with sensors and manipulator arms, was their eyes and ears in the crushing dark. For 2 hours, it spiraled deeper into the trench, its powerful lights cutting through the blackness to reveal a stark, alien landscape of volcanic rock and strange, pale creatures that scattered from its path. Passing 6,800 meters, the pilot's voice droned, a counterpoint to the rising tension. Pressure is nominal. All systems green. Aerys watched the acoustic feed. The anomalous signal was growing stronger, clearer. The drone's sensors were getting a much higher resolution reading now, confirming the signal's complexity. It wasn't just a single source. It was an entire field of energy, a bubble of intricate, overlapping patterns. "There's something ahead," the pilot announced, his voice suddenly sharp. "Massive sonar reflection. It's not rock. The surface is too smooth, too geometrically perfect." On the main screen, the sonar image resolved into a definite shape. It was enormous, at least 200 meters across, and teardrop-shaped. It rested on the trench floor, partially buried in silt that must have been accumulating for centuries. Yet its exposed surface was pristine, untouched by the relentless corrosion of the deep sea. "Bring us in closer, slow and steady," Rostova commanded. Visuals on screen, now. The drone's high-definition cameras activated, and the command center fell silent. The object that filled the screen was breathtaking. It wasn't made of metal, or at least not any metal known to man. Its surface was a deep, crystalline black, like obsidian, but it seemed to absorb the drone's powerful lights, leaving no reflection. Intricate lines of a faint, silvery material traced across its hull, forming patterns that were neither random nor purely geometric, evoking the branching of neurons or the veins of a leaf. It was a craft, unmistakably artificial, but it felt ancient, organic. It looked less like it was built and more like it had been grown. Aerys felt a chill crawl up his spine. His grandfather's last words echoed in his mind. Singing metal. This thing didn't sing with sound, but the energy it emitted was a symphony. "It's beautiful," someone whispered. "It's alien," Rostova stated, her voice tight. "Analysis team, I want every sensor reading you can get. Composition, energy output, radiation levels. Thorn, what are your acoustics telling you?" "The energy field is emanating from the entire structure," Aerys explained, trying to keep his own awe out of his voice. "It's not propulsion, it's not a weapon. It feels more like a state of being, like the hum of a living thing. And there's something else. The field seems to be focused downward, into the trench floor beneath the craft." Rostova frowned. "Focused? What do you mean?" "It's like a containment field. The energy isn't radiating outward in all directions. It's being projected, creating a barrier of some kind beneath it. It's shielding something, or guarding something." The implication hung in the air. This wasn't a crashed ship waiting for discovery. It was an active installation, a sentinel. The discovery of an alien artifact was monumental enough to rewrite human history. The discovery of an alien artifact performing an active, unknown function was something else entirely. It was terrifying. The analysis teams began reporting in. No detectable radiation. No signs of life aboard, at least not in any biological form they could recognize. The hull's composition was unidentifiable, a complex carbon-silicon lattice that seemed to defy known material science. As they watched, a section of the silvery lines on the craft's hull began to glow, pulsing in a slow, rhythmic pattern. The pattern was a perfect match for the energy signature Aerys had first detected. "It knows we're here," Aerys said, his voice barely a whisper. "It's responding." The craft was not a derelict. It was awake. And for the first time in what could be eons, it had company. The command center, once a pinnacle of human achievement, suddenly felt very small, very fragile. They were children who had stumbled into a place of ancient power, and they had no idea what the rules were. The weight of their discovery settled upon them, a pressure far greater than the 4,000 meters of water above their heads. They had found their alien craft, but the true mystery was just beginning. The question was no longer what it was, but what it was doing. What could possibly be so important, or so dangerous that it required a silent, alien guardian to stand watch in the deepest, darkest corner of their world. The arrival of Director Valerius from the corporate headquarters was as subtle as a depth charge. He came down on a private, high-speed submersible, his presence filling the station with an aura of cold, impatient authority. While Eva Rostova was a scientist at heart, forced into an administrative role, Valerius was a creature of the boardroom, a man who saw the universe not in terms of wonder, but in terms of assets and leverage. His eyes, the color of polished slate, swept over the command center, dismissing the scientific fervor with a single, appraising glance. He wasn't interested in the discovery. He was interested in its applications. Director Rostova, Dr. Thorne, he said, his voice a low purr that did nothing to hide its steel edge. Congratulations. You found something novel. My team has reviewed your preliminary data. The energy signature alone represents a paradigm shift in power generation. The hull material could revolutionize everything from construction to military armor. With all due respect, Director Valerius, Aerys interjected, stepping forward. We have no idea what this craft is or what its purpose is. Approaching it as a resource to be exploited is not only premature, it's incredibly dangerous. Valerius gave Aerys a thin, dismissive smile. Dr. Thorne, the xenolinguist, your file is fascinating. A career built on a theory with no evidence. Until now, perhaps. But let's be clear. Your job was to find anomalies. You've done so. Now the engineers and strategists will take over. This isn't a resource deposit, it's a first contact scenario, Rostova argued, siding with Aerys. We need to proceed with extreme caution. The craft is active. It responded to our drone. A reflexive response, Valerius countered, waving a hand. Like a sea anemone closing when touched. It's a machine, director, and a very old one. It's time we opened it up to see how it works. The plan Valerius outlined was brutally simple. Use the station's deep-sea mining laser to cut a sample from the craft's hull. If that failed, they would attempt to drill through it. Aerys was horrified. You can't. We don't know what that will do. The energy field it's projecting is stable, but we have no idea how it will react to aggression. It might be a defense mechanism, a self-destruct system, or something far worse. You're treating this like cracking a safe, but you have no idea if there's a bomb inside. Every great leap forward involves risk, Doctor, Valerius said coolly. The board wants results, not philosophical debates. The potential gain for the corporation, and for humanity, is immeasurable. We are not leaving a technology that could end energy scarcity sitting on the bottom of the ocean because we're afraid of it. The tension in the command center was palpable. The scientific staff, who had been buzzing with the thrill of discovery, now looked on with grim apprehension. They were caught between their own protocols of careful, methodical research and the unwavering demands of their corporate overseer. Aerys knew he was running out of time. He had to prove the craft was more than just a machine. He had to prove it was intelligent, that it was something to be communicated with, not dismantled. He retreated to his console, pulling up the high-resolution recordings of the craft's light patterns. He had spent years developing algorithms to decode complex, non-human communication systems. It was time to put his life's work to the test. He isolated the patterns, breaking them down into their fundamental components. It was a language of light, syntax built from pulses, grammar from color shifts, meaning from the geometry of the glowing lines. It was more complex than anything he had ever seen. He decided on a risky counter-proposal. Director Valerius, he said, turning from his console. Give me 12 hours. Let me try to establish a dialogue. I've found a syntax in its light patterns. I believe I can replicate it. If we show it that we are capable of understanding, that we are not just a threat, it might communicate with us. Let me use the drone to send a message. Valerius looked amused. A message? What do you plan to say, Doctor? Take me to your leader? I plan to say, we see you. We are listening. I'll use a basic prime number sequence, encoded in the same light-based syntax it's using. It's the universal sign of intelligence. If it responds in kind, you'll have your proof that this is more than just an old machine. Valerius considered it for a moment, his fingers drumming on the console. The political optics of destroying a potentially sentient alien artifact without first attempting communication were not ideal. A failed, peaceful attempt would give him the justification he needed to proceed with his more aggressive plan. 12 hours, Doctor, he conceded. No more. You can play with your light signals. But when your time is up, the laser team gets to work. Don't disappoint me. Aerys felt a small nod of victory, quickly overshadowed by the immense pressure of the task ahead. He had 12 hours to bridge an evolutionary and technological gap that could span millions of years. 12 hours to convince an ancient, alien sentinel that the noisy creatures who had just appeared on its doorstep were worth talking to. As he began programming the drone, he looked out the viewport into the crushing darkness. He wasn't just trying to save a priceless artifact. He was trying to save humanity from its own worst impulses: greed, impatience, and the arrogant belief that anything it didn't understand was its to take. The Chimera hovered in the dark water, a mode of human technology before the silent, colossal craft. On the command center screens, the drone's external emitters, normally used for scientific scanning, had been recalibrated by Aerys to pulse with controlled light. He had spent the last 10 hours in a state of intense focus, a trance-like flow of data and intuition. He had constructed his message, a simple but elegant sequence of prime numbers, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, translated into the alien syntax of light and geometry. It was the most important sentence of his life, a greeting sent across an unimaginable void. Ready to transmit, Director, Aerys announced, his voice hoarse. Valerius nodded from the command chair, a look of bored skepticism on his face. Proceed, Doctor. Your time is almost up. With a final keystroke, Aerys sent the command. The drone's lights blinked on, not with their usual steady glare, but with the faint, silvery glow he had programmed. A series of intricate patterns pulsed across the water, a silent question sent into the abyss. 2 pulses. Pause. 3 pulses. Pause. The sequence repeated, a beacon of logic in the crushing dark. For a long, agonizing minute, nothing happened. The alien craft remained inert, its own lights dim and steady. The command center was so quiet Aerys could hear the soft whir of the air circulation vents. Valerius let out a soft, derisive chuckle. Well, Doctor, it appears your pen pal isn't home. Prepare the mining laser. Wait. Aerys breathed, leaning closer to the screen. Look. A single silvery line on the craft's hull flickered. Then another. Slowly, like a waking consciousness, the intricate patterns on its surface began to glow. But it wasn't repeating their signal. It was responding with something new. A cascade of light flowed across its surface, a breathtakingly complex display of shifting colors and shapes. It was an answer, but it was an answer in a language they couldn't comprehend. What is it doing? Rostova asked, her voice filled with awe. It's not just repeating the primes, Aerys said, his mind racing as his algorithms tried to find a pattern. It's extrapolating. It's showing us the sequence continuing, but it's also showing us the relationships between the numbers, the underlying mathematical principles. It's not just saying I understand. It's saying, I understand, and here is what you have yet to learn. The display of light intensified, shifting from pure mathematics to something else. Images began to form, not literal pictures, but abstract representations that conveyed concepts. Aerys saw the double helix of DNA, the structure of an atom, the spiraling arms of a galaxy. It was a deluge of information, a lesson from a master teacher. This wasn't just an intelligent machine. It was a repository of knowledge on a cosmic scale. It's a library, Aerys whispered. A sentinel and a library. Valerius stared at the screen, his skepticism replaced by a stark, hungry avarice. The power generation and exotic materials were nothing compared to this. This was the key to unlocking the universe. It is magnificent, he breathed. It's a being, Aerys corrected firmly. It's shown us it's intelligent and communicative. We have to treat it as such. No more talk of lasers or drills. The light show from the craft subsided, and a new, single image appeared, held steady for them to see. It was a representation of their own solar system, with a clear focus on Earth. And then, a second shape appeared from outside the system, a dark, menacing form that seemed to crawl between the stars. The image of Earth pulsed with a soft, protective blue light, the same light that the Sentinel craft was now emitting. The message was unmistakable. I am not a ship. I am a shield. Aerys felt the blood drain from his face. The open loop in his own life, the mystery of his grandfather's disappearance, suddenly clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Singing metal, a submarine's hull resonating with an energy field it couldn't comprehend. A sudden activation. A defense against something passing too close. The Sentinel wasn't guarding a treasure. It was guarding them. It had been standing watch over Earth for an unknown length of time, protecting it from a threat they never even knew existed. The stakes of their little deep-sea expedition had just escalated from a first-contact scenario to a matter of planetary survival. The stunning truth landed in the command center with the force of a physical blow. They weren't the discoverers. They were the protected, ignorant children living in a walled garden, and they had just started hammering on the walls, demanding to be let out, completely unaware of the wolves that lay waiting in the dark. The revelation from the Sentinel sent a wave of shock and disbelief through the command center. The abstract image of a predatory shape moving through the stars was open to interpretation, but the context was terrifyingly clear. The craft was a guardian. For a moment, even Valerius was silent, the sheer scale of the implication momentarily eclipsing his ambition. But only for a moment. A clever deception, he said, his voice regaining its confident dismissiveness. A sophisticated defense mechanism designed to scare off intruders by showing them a boogeyman. It's protecting a power source, Dr. Thorne, nothing more. A power source so vast it can run a planetary shield, and it wants to keep it for itself. How can you twist this into a lie? Aerys argued, his frustration boiling over. It showed us a fundamental truth about our existence. We are not alone, and not everything out there is friendly. This craft, this being, has been protecting us. Protecting us. Or imprisoning us. Valerius countered, his eyes gleaming with a new, dangerous idea. Perhaps this guardian is a warden, keeping a developing species quarantined. Caging us. Its motives are unknown. Its technology, however, is right there for the taking. If we can harness its power, we won't need its protection. We can protect ourselves. He turned to the laser technician. You have your orders. Target the main energy conduit. I want a core sample. Director, you can't. Rostova shouted, rising from her chair. This is an insane risk. You are firing on a potentially sentient being that is actively trying to warn us. I am taking a calculated risk to secure humanity's future, Valerius declared, his voice booming with authority. Anyone who interferes will be charged with insubordination and corporate espionage. Proceed. The technician, his face pale, hesitated for a second before his hands moved to the controls. Aerys watched in horror as the high-powered mining laser on the Chimera began to charge, its ruby-red focusing beam locking onto the alien craft. He felt a profound sense of despair. They were about to commit an act of galactic vandalism, an act of aggression born from fear and greed, and he was powerless to stop it. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The laser discharged, a brilliant red lance of energy cutting through the dark water. It struck the Sentinel's crystalline hull, and for an instant, nothing happened. The energy seemed to be absorbed without effect. Then, the entire craft flared with a blinding white light. A wave of force, not physical but something else, erupted outwards. On the screens, the Chimera's video feed dissolved into static, its systems shorting out. Alarms blared throughout Triton's point. Lights flickered, consoles died, and the steady hum of the life support system faltered. The station was plunged into a terrifying semi-darkness, with only the red glow of the emergency backup lights providing illumination. What happened? Rostova demanded over the chaos. Damage report. We've lost the Chimera, the pilot yelled. Total system failure. Main power is fluctuating. Life support is on emergency backup. The Sentinel had defended itself, not with a counterattack, but by releasing a targeted electromagnetic pulse that had crippled their technology. It was a non-lethal response, a clear statement, stay away. But Valerius was undeterred. It's fighting back, he snarled, his face illuminated by the red emergency lighting. That proves it has something to hide. Get me auxiliary power to the drilling platform. We're going in with mechanical force. Aerys knew he had to do something. Valerius was going to provoke this thing until it responded with lethal force, and the entire station would be the casualty. The Sentinel was a guardian, but even a guardian's patience had its limits. He looked at the fluctuating power readouts. The Sentinel's pulse had been precise, disabling their offensive capabilities but leaving basic systems intact. It was a warning shot. but it had also created an opportunity. The station's security systems were in chaos. The chain of command fractured. He made a split-second decision. While the command staff was distracted, he slipped out of the chaotic command center and ran towards the submersible bay. There was one small, one-person research sub, the Angler, that was shielded against electromagnetic interference for close proximity volcanic vent study. It was his only chance to get down there, to try and communicate with the Sentinel directly, to apologize for the unprovoked attack and de-escalate the situation before Valerius pushed them past the point of no return. As he ran through the red-lit corridors, the station groaning around him under the strain of the power fluctuations, he knew this was an act of extreme insubordination. He was risking his career, his freedom, and his life. But as the image of the menacing shape in the stars burned in his mind, he realized this was about more than his own life. It was about repaying a debt to a silent protector he never knew he had. The submersible bay was in chaos. Emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows, and the shouts of technicians echoed off the damp metal walls. Aerys slipped past the confusion, his ID card still granting him access to the Angler's launch cradle. The small, spherical submersible was his last, desperate hope. He sealed the hatch behind him, the sudden silence of the cockpit a stark contrast to the mayhem outside. Powering up the subsystems, he initiated the launch sequence, overriding the security lockouts with his high-level science credentials. He didn't have time to wait for clearance that would never come. With a jolt and a hiss of displaced water, the Angler detached from its moorings and dropped into the blackness of the launch tube. He was committed now. Unidentified submersible launch detected. A panicked voice crackled over the station comms. "Director, someone has taken the Angler." Valerius's enraged roar followed. "Lock down the bay. Do not let him leave." But it was too late. Aerys was already descending, a tiny, defiant spark sinking into the immense, crushing dark. The journey to the trench floor was a tense, lonely affair. He was running silent, his comms off, trusting the sub's passive sensors to guide him. As he descended, the ambient energy from the Sentinel grew stronger, making the Angler's instruments hum and flicker. It felt like approaching a living god. He finally reached the trench floor and saw it. The Sentinel was glowing, its entire surface radiating a soft, defensive blue light. The crippled Chimera drone lay nearby, a dead husk on the seafloor. Aerys piloted the Angler forward slowly, stopping a respectful 50 meters away. He didn't know what to do next. How could he possibly convey his intentions? He decided to fall back on his instincts as a linguist, on the first principle of communication, vulnerability. He powered down all non-essential systems, including the sub's external manipulator arms, leaving himself completely defenseless. Then, using the sub's external lights, he flashed a simple, repeating pattern. Not a complex prime number sequence, but a simple rhythm. One pulse, pause, two pulses. A heartbeat. The Sentinel's glow intensified, and a single, focused beam of light shot out, enveloping the Angler. It wasn't an attack. It was a scan. And then, something incredible happened. The cockpit filled with light, and images flooded Aerys's mind. It wasn't a psychic projection in the crude, fictional sense. It was a direct data transfer, a stream of consciousness that his brain struggled to translate into sensory information. He saw the history of Earth's oceans, from the primordial soup to the evolution of the first complex life. He saw civilizations rise and fall. And he saw the Sentinel arrive, a silent seed falling from the stars to embed itself in the ocean floor, long before humans had even learned to walk upright. He was shown what it was guarding against. It was a being, a creature of immense size and power, slumbering deep within the Earth's mantle. Not evil, not malevolent, but an ancient form of life whose awakening would be a geological apocalypse. Its slow, dreaming breaths were the cause of tectonic shifts, its nightmares the source of supervolcanoes. The Sentinel's purpose was to act as a cosmic lullaby, its energy field soothing the creature, keeping it dormant. And then he saw his grandfather's submarine. It had stumbled upon the Sentinel during a period of heightened activity, when the slumbering creature had stirred in its sleep. The Sentinel's field had flared to contain the disturbance, and the submarine, a fragile metal shell, was simply caught in the backlash, its systems and crew obliterated in an instant. It wasn't an act of aggression, but a tragic accident. The Sentinel showed him one final, terrifying vision, the mining laser striking its hull. He felt the impact not as a physical blow, but as a discordant, painful shriek that echoed deep into the earth. The lullaby had been interrupted. The slumbering Titan was beginning to stir. Back on Triton's point, the station was shaking. Seismic tremors, far stronger than any they had ever recorded, were radiating up from the trench. The drilling platform that Valerius had ordered activated was being torn from its moorings by the heaving seafloor. "It's a chain reaction," Rostova yelled over the alarms. "Our attack, it's destabilizing the entire trench." Valerius stared at the seismic readouts, his face ashen. The asset he had tried to seize was gone, replaced by a planetary catastrophe of his own making. In the cockpit of the Angler, Aerys came back to himself, gasping for breath, the light in his sub fading. He understood now. The Sentinel wasn't just a guardian. It was a lock, a seal on a prison of unimaginable scale. And they had just hammered on the door, waking the prisoner. The Sentinel's light pulsed at him again, no longer a lesson, but a desperate plea. A new set of images filled his mind. A diagram of the Sentinel's core, a representation of a human neural network, and an image of them merging. The Sentinel was a machine, a powerful one, but it lacked something. It lacked the creative, unpredictable spark of organic consciousness. To generate the massive, complex wave of energy needed to soothe the waking Titan, it needed a partner. It needed a pilot. The choice presented to Aerys was not really a choice at all. It was the culmination of his life, a convergence of his scientific curiosity, his deep-seated empathy, and the inherited legacy of his grandfather's fate. The Sentinel needed a symbiotic partner to amplify and focus its power, and he was the only one who could answer the call. In the shaking cockpit of the Angler, surrounded by the alien light, he sent back the only answer he could. Using the sub's lights, he pulsed the rhythm of his own heartbeat, a sign of life, of acceptance. He was ready. The Sentinel responded immediately. A conduit of pure light extended from its crystalline hull and attached to the Angler's forward viewport. The submersible systems shrieked in protest as the alien energy flooded the small craft, but nothing broke. Aerys felt a strange, tingling sensation, and then his world dissolved. He was no longer Aerys Thorn, a man in a metal sphere. He was a consciousness adrift in an ocean of pure information. He was inside the Sentinel. His own memories, childhood, his studies, the face of his grandfather in an old photograph, mingled with the Sentinel's vast, ancient existence. He felt its eons of silent vigil, the patient, unending watch over a planet teeming with fragile, chaotic life. He felt its loneliness, and through their connection, the Sentinel felt him, his fear, his determination, his grief, his boundless capacity for wonder. For the first time, the Sentinel understood the species it had been protecting. It felt the illogical, fierce hope that drove a single, soft-bodied creature to descend into the crushing dark to say, "I'm sorry." Together, they were more than the sum of their parts. Aerys's intuitive, emotional human mind gave the Sentinel's logical, powerful systems a new focus, a creative spark. He could direct the flow of its immense energy with the precision of a surgeon and the artistry of a composer. He was the conductor, and the Sentinel was his orchestra. He reached out with his newfound senses, feeling the tectonic plates grinding against each other, feeling the stirring of the ancient being in the mantle below. It was waking, confused and angered by the sharp, painful prod of their laser. Aerys didn't respond with force. Guided by a deep, instinctual empathy, he and the Sentinel began to weave a new lullaby. It was a complex wave of energy, not just a simple, soothing hum, but a symphony of patterns based on the rhythms of life itself. The double helix of DNA, the branching of a tree, the tidal pull of the moon. It was a message of peace, a reassurance that all was well, a gentle persuasion to return to sleep. The energy flowed from the Sentinel, amplified 1,000 times over, a wave of tranquility that washed deep into the Earth's core. Back on Triton's point, the violent shaking began to subside. The seismic alarms fell silent, one by one. The red alerts on the status boards blinked back to a stable amber, then a calming green. The crew, who had been bracing for their imminent destruction, looked at each other in stunned silence. The catastrophe had simply stopped. Rostova stared at the energy readings coming from the trench. The output from the alien craft was off the charts, but it was a controlled, coherent wave. She looked at the empty space at the console where Aerys had been sitting. "It's him," she whispered. "Somehow it's him." In the deep, Aerys felt the great creature below relax its rage. The tectonic stress eased. The slow, deep rhythm of its slumber returned. Their lullaby had worked. The crisis was averted. As the connection with the Sentinel began to recede, Aerys felt a profound sense of loss, like waking from the most vivid dream of his life. He was returned to his own mind, to the cramped cockpit of the Angler. He was just a man again, but he was changed. He now carried the memory of millennia within him. He was tired, more exhausted than he had ever been, but he was at peace. The Sentinel's light pulsed one last time, a message directly to him, a feeling of deep, unending gratitude. "Thank you, partner." The conduit of light retracted, and the Sentinel's glow faded back to its normal, watchful state. The Guardian was back on duty, its vigil renewed, its purpose fulfilled. Aerys had not only saved the station, he had saved the world, and no one would ever know. The journey back to Triton's Point was surreal. Aerys piloted the Angler on autopilot, his mind a whirlwind of cosmic memories and human exhaustion. When he finally docked, the bay doors opened to reveal not security guards waiting to arrest him, but the solemn faces of Director Rostova and the entire command crew. No one spoke as he emerged from the submersible, his legs unsteady. Valerius was nowhere to be seen. Rostova stepped forward and simply placed a hand on his shoulder. "Welcome back, Doctor," she said, her voice thick with emotion. The unspoken understanding between them was absolute. The official report was a masterpiece of scientific obfuscation. Director Valerius was relieved of command, cited for reckless endangerment of the station and its crew. The seismic event was classified as a newly discovered type of tectonic resonance cascade, which was miraculously stabilized by a controlled energy discharge from the anomalous object. The object itself, now designated Sentinel-1, was declared a natural geological formation with unusual electromagnetic properties, far too dangerous to approach again. It was a lie, but it was a necessary one, a truth that humanity was not yet ready to comprehend. Aerys became the station's quiet, enigmatic hero. He was no longer just the odds-in a linguist. He was the man who had faced down an apocalypse and won. He retreated into his work, but it was different now. His research was no longer theoretical. He would spend the rest of his life studying the Sentinel's faint energy whispers, a conversation that only he could understand. He was its liaison, its partner, and its friend. The station returned to a semblance of normalcy, but an undercurrent of reverence remained. The crew would often find themselves looking at the deep-sea monitors, at the sector of the trench that was now a permanent restricted zone, and a quiet sense of awe would pass through them. They were living on the shores of a new, undiscovered continent of knowledge, and only one man had the map. A few months later, Rostova called Aerys to the command center. "You have a visitor," she said, a small smile on her face. On the main screen was a live video feed from the surface. An elderly woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and a familiar stoic expression stood on the deck of the station's support vessel. It was his grandmother, the widow of the lost naval commander. "They told me you found something," she said, her voice clear despite the distance. Something that explained what happened to him. Aerys looked at her, the last living link to his grandfather. He couldn't tell her the whole truth, but he could give her the peace she had been denied for decades. "He didn't die because of an accident or an equipment failure," Aerys said softly. "He was in the wrong place at the wrong time, during an event of incredible power. A natural event no one could have predicted or survived. He was part of something bigger than any of us knew. And in a way, his sacrifice helped us understand. It helped me save everyone." His grandmother nodded slowly, a single tear tracing a path down her weathered cheek. It was enough. The open loop of his family's history had finally been closed. He had not only saved the future, he had made peace with the past. The Sentinel remained in the deep, a silent, powerful presence. Its existence was the world's greatest secret, a secret now shared by the handful of scientists on Triton's Point. They had become a new kind of order, guardians of a truth too profound for their time. Their work was no longer about discovery for the sake of knowledge. It was about stewardship. As Aerys stood at his console, watching the faint, rhythmic pulse of the Sentinel's energy, he knew his life had found its true purpose. He was a listener, a translator, a bridge between two worlds. Humanity slept on, safe in their beds, unaware of the leviathans that dreamed in the heart of their world, and unaware of the silent, alien god in their ocean that kept them safe. The craft in the deep had been found, and what it was guarding was a truth that had indeed stunned everyone who learned it, that the greatest discoveries are not about the power we can seize, but about the responsibilities we must accept. Years passed. Dr. Aerys Thorne became a legend within the hushed circles of deep-sea research, the man who quietly redefined humanity's understanding of its own planet. Triton's Point evolved from a simple research station into the clandestine headquarters of the Sentinel program, a multi-generational project dedicated to monitoring and communicating with the Guardian in the deep. Eva Rostova, now a senior figure in a newly formed and highly secretive planetary science directorate, ensured Aerys had everything he needed. The world on the surface remained blissfully unaware. The official story of the tectonic resonance cascade had held a dry footnote in geological textbooks. The riches Valerius had sought, the advanced technology, the limitless energy, remained tantalizingly out of reach, protected not by force, but by a shared pact of secrecy among the few who knew the truth. Aerys never left the abyss. He aged with the station, his hair turning silver, his face lined with the wisdom of a man who conversed with an ancient alien consciousness. His partnership with the Sentinel deepened. It was a silent, telepathic bond, a constant stream of shared awareness. Through the Sentinel, Aerys explored the universe in ways no astronaut ever could. He witnessed the birth of stars and distant nebulae, felt the silent song of black holes, and learned the complex histories of civilizations that had risen and fallen long before Earth's sun had even formed. He learned that the entity sleeping in the Earth's core was not unique. The galaxy was filled with such beings, a form of life so ancient and vast they were practically a part of planetary geology. And for many of them, there were sentinels, a network of silent watchers, a galactic society of guardians maintaining a delicate cosmic balance. The menacing shape the Sentinel had shown them years ago was a rogue intelligence, a being that consumed worlds by deliberately awakening the Titans, and the Sentinels were the only thing that stood in its way. This knowledge was a heavy burden, but it also filled Aerys with a profound sense of purpose. Humanity's role was not to conquer the stars, but to learn its place within this ancient, silent order. His work was to prepare them for that future, however distant it might be. He mentored a new generation of scientists, carefully selected for their empathy and wisdom as much as their intellect. He taught them the Sentinel's language of light and thought, preparing them for the day he would be gone, ensuring the vigil would continue. One evening, as Aerys sat in the dimly lit command center, now his personal study, the Sentinel sent him an unusual message. It was not a cosmic lesson or a status update. It was a feeling of anticipation. Something was coming. Alarms, silent and encrypted, flashed on his console. Long-range sensors on the far side of the solar system had detected an object moving towards Earth at incredible speed. It was not a comet or an asteroid. It was a craft, and it was on a direct intercept course. It was the predator the Sentinel had warned them about. It had finally come. But this time, humanity was not alone. Aerys opened a secure channel to Rostova. "Eva," he said, his voice calm and steady. "It's time." On the surface, humanity was about to have its world turned upside down. But in the deep, the Guardians were ready. Aerys placed his hand on the cool metal of the console, feeling the familiar, powerful hum of his ancient friend. The Sentinel's energy field began to glow, its light illuminating the eternal darkness of the trench. It pulsed with a new message, one not of warning, but of defiance. A message that Aerys translated with a grim smile. Let it come. The story of Triton's Point was not an ending. It was the beginning of humanity's true history. The stunning discovery of what the craft was guarding was only the first chapter. The real story was about to begin, not in the crushing dark of the abyss, but in the brilliant light of the stars. The child species the Sentinel had protected for so long was about to grow up, take its place as a partner in the guardianship, and fight for its home. Aerys Thorne, the quiet linguist, had become the first ambassador of a new age, proving that the greatest strength lies not in the weapons we build, but in the connections we forge and the secrets we have the wisdom to protect.